Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
Welcome to Your Town Matters. I'm Natalie Sturgeon, and my guest today is the mayor of the town of Saint Andrews. Thanks for joining me today.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Let's start with what's fresh on my mind, which is the courthouse. What were your chief takeaways from the presentations from the Saint Andrews Civic Trust?
Well, first of all, my primary takeaway is thank you to the Civic Trust. There was a significant amount of time put into that proposal. There was a lot of community engagement. There was a lot of thought. Probably a lot of, hey, how do we make this work or this work? So the Civic Trust has a long history in St. Andrews of preserving buildings and being a good partner with the municipality, being critical to it. So thank you to all of their volunteers, because at the end of the day, they are all volunteers. If you were to pay for that service, it would be quite significant. And my second takeaway is that I did think it was more of an elaborate plan than a consultant that we hired to do it. So appreciation, but secondly is I have had that document for quite some time, 120-page document. I've read it front to back a couple of times. I've went to the engagement session myself at the courthouse. I saw a prior kind of a question and answer period plus this. So I'm very familiar with the document. So most of it is registered before. I think that a development like that, I'll call it, or at least a Courthouse 2.0 would very much benefit the community as a gathering place. So there's no question about it that it would be lovely space. I just think that for the municipality, we do have to look at it as we have aging infrastructure in place. Some of the things that are going to be done there already have homes in the community. Is it something that a private organization should put the lead on, or is it something the municipality should? Private organizations seem to have more community support for donations, sometimes more success at grants. So really that was kind of what I was focusing in on. Should this be a municipally owned asset, or is this something like an organization like Civic Trust themselves may want to take a leadership role with some support from the municipality? So lots to be discussed. I can't tell you. I gave kind of some early indications too that I think we should go back to the province one last time. Civic Trust themselves did say that the number one thing people said is it should be a courthouse. Well, the municipality shouldn't be paying for a courthouse that is for the province of New Brunswick. We already have a federal wharf in my mind that the municipality pays for, because all the other wharves in the area are federally as well, and there's only so much we can afford.
Well, and I mean, to refresh everybody's memory, there are challenges with the structure itself, the lead paint on the exterior, the roof, and that's going to cost a lot of money to do. So is it possible that you could give it to the Civic Trust and support them in ways like applying for grants and that sort of thing, or would you just let them take it? And
yeah, you would sell it to them for $1 is what you would do. Now, whether it has to go to RFP to other organizations or not, I did touch on that in the meeting. And there'd be probably various people that feel various things, but there might be another community group in the area that wants to take it, make it a headquarters too. So, but in respect to Civic Trust, they've already put a great deal of time in it. So you've got to be aware of all those factors. So the main thing is that the building is preserved. It's preserved properly. I will say that it doesn't have to look the inside like it does today. I know that, it is nice that it looks like a courthouse, but buildings are repurposed all the time, and the goal would be to save the building and have a useful community purpose for it. Giving it to them for $1. And to your question about support, is we do have a tourism accommodation levy. They're developing new tourism assets for our community. A lot of those would be loved by visitors, especially a welcome center they're talking about. It's not unheard of to say that they couldn't apply to the municipality, or even through, there's certain things that Explore St. Andrews does and doesn't, but even having a greater conversation there, should we have a greater partnership? All those options are on the table. One thing's for sure is doing nothing that's kind of what it felt like since the moment the town has acquired it. My patience personally for that is run out. We have to make a decision, and unless there's new information coming in, the decision's not going to be any easier tomorrow than it is today.
Were there any things that they presented to you that surprised you? Were there any elements that you were like, I wouldn't have thought that would be something we could do there?
Yeah, there's some elements that were really exciting, interesting. I do agree that when you look at the green space, it is underutilized. I made a joke about sliding. I do go sliding there with my kids every year, a couple times a year. But other than that, in the summer, it isn't really well utilized space. And I think if we're going to have green space in the community, the goal of keeping it green space is so people enjoy it. So I do think that they put a lot of good thoughts into that particular space. There was some things that I did hear in that I did question. The skating oval would be one. It's not just a skating oval. If you've ever watched one, they actually have to have a Zamboni come in. Where does the Zamboni go? All that. It's almost a full-time job for someone just for a skating oval. And anyone that's had a backyard rink will tell you that you can't just use it with a homemade sprinkler and get it good. Like if it's heavily used. So there were some things in it that I certainly saw as like really, really strong options in the proposal, but there were some things that I questioned the financial feasibility of it all. And one of the questions that Councillor Blanchard said is, there's this revenue, what is the cost with it? And that has to go through that microscope as well, especially if the municipality is going to be the one to do it. But all in all, the feedback that I saw from the community for the people that participated, they did an excellent job of incorporating it all to say that there's not one solution that's going to be for this courthouse. It's going to be a combination. And it's really impressive how many combinations they put into one proposal. I've never seen anything like it, to be honest with you. There was like, here, this is going to be, here's this. And of course, the presentation was really professionally done and well thought out by Mr. Janot, and just appreciative, and we'll see where it goes.
What did you think of the community feedback, the community's response to the presentation?
So a lot of people that go, so as far as the presentation, the people that were in the room were stakeholders, whether they were involved with the Historical Society, the Civic Trust, with the exception of one youth that was there. And I don't know if it was a project, but it was good to see Sadie there.
Yes.
But they were all stakeholders in it. They want to make sure that the asset is protected. And I don't think that anyone's saying this, and even the presentation, they said, this isn't all going to happen. Like, there's some of these ideas are good, some of them may not happen. I don't think anyone went into that presentation saying this is exactly what it has to be. So everyone was flexible to it, but it was under the spirit of, hey, we're all community members working together. Let's find the best solution and make sure that the building's protected.
One of the very valued buildings in this community.
It is. We have a few, but it's certainly one of them.
For sure. So I wanted to touch quickly on the traffic concerns. There was a lot that your senior administrator talked about. What did you make of some of the things that people suggested? I know there was a lot of pushback on the 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit, and then there was a significant discussion about RVs and campers. Let's start with the feedback. What did you think the response was to those changes that you want to make?
I think that there's two lenses to that. Is first of all, you got to separate them. One is enforcement. So is it that 50 is the problem, or is it the fact that we have a lack of enforcement at certain times in our community? At night in the summertime, you hear those cars racing around town. It doesn't matter if it's 40 or 50. I guess the only thing that's a difference if they get pulled over is it's more excessive and they get more of a serious penalty. So there's that issue, which is, this isn't going to solve that. But there also, we've put up actually like radars in the community that actually measure the results of what people are driving. And there is a perception, and I've actually had it happen to myself when I was going 45 kilometers an hour and I heard someone yell, slow down. Well, the reality is I wasn't speeding. So there's a perception, especially on those thin streets that have cars, if someone's going 50 kilometers an hour, they're speeding. And the data that we actually got indicated that most people were going 40 to 50 kilometers an hour. So when people say they're speeding up and down the street all day, I'm not saying there isn't speeders, but a lot of the time 50 kilometers an hour looks fast in a small town with cars on the side of the road with people. So that's where that whole debate comes in. One thing's been clear is that residents want to see better traffic flow and more strict enforcement in our community. We are working separately with the RCMP. There was a meeting this week. I think RCMP presence has increased. It certainly has around the schools in the morning. But all in all, the look at 40 kilometers an hour would be, there is a big difference if you watch a car in Saint Andrews going 40 and 50 personally, it was not 100% that all councillors think it should be 40. It was just the consensus at this point, and we'll go through the process to see if it gets there.
Yeah, and the other thing, that there was a lengthy discussion about campers. I know Kurt kind of suggested that it's a balance that you're trying to strike here, because you don't want people to feel unwelcome when they come here and there's no space at the campground. And you mentioned that as well. I wondered, the parking lot that is about to come up for review for the public, would that be something that you could take as an option to maybe direct people, or is it like what?
Probably not, because I know the residents that are there, they don't want parking lot little people camping in their backyard.
Right.
Doesn't mean it can or cannot happen. There's a
Right.
public engagement process, and it is public space, so you can't say that can happen. But we have some existing green space throughout the community that they could go. I think that a balance is the right word. If all of our campgrounds are full, which does happen regularly, you don't want to tell people, sorry, get out of our community. Right. And the same sense, I was against any proposal that put campers near places where young people are. I don't think they should be at the Vincent Massey Elementary School parking lot. I don't think they should be by our soccer field when we have a jamboree going, with people staying there with campers that are from away. The public safety element, I don't think they should be there. So I think finding a place, some type of solution where they can go, and we are going to check obviously out by the St. Croix Island viewing place. I think sending them to an area like that is a compromise. And I think the education is, hey, you were in a jam last night, you got in late, you parked here, just to let you know you're not staying your whole vacation. And I think there's a difference between somebody staying maybe in a public space like behind the arena versus somebody that's camping in front of your house. I think we can all agree that we don't want people to get out in the morning, go to their driveway, and someone's camping, having their breakfast in the folding chair on your front, right on the edge of your front lawn. I don't think that's what we want. So, or we don't want people like literally, we got our downtown shops are open and someone's in their house coat in the downtown, camping downtown. So there's a balance. We got to figure it out. There's probably no right, complete answer that says that makes sense, but finding an area to say, hey, you can go there, that probably makes the most sense. And town staff is looking at what some of those options are.
Okay. I want to just quickly, so the Union of Municipalities and the Paramedic Association of New Brunswick and the Firefighters Association is asking the province to review Ambulance New Brunswick's contract and its service model prior to the renewal of its contract in 2027. Do you agree with that need for a review and sort of what you have an understanding of the medical calls in St. Andrews?
100% I support that. You're re-entering an agreement. You've got to do due diligence on what's working and what's not working. Some things are working, some things are not working. At the end of the day, Ambulance New Brunswick's a private business that brings in a serious profit. So, to have a review when you're putting public dollars into that is something you have to do. We all hear horror stories that, certain nights that the ambulance in our area might be in Sussex is what you hear on the street. The information I get, so we talk about RCMP, we are constantly holding them accountable. We're meeting with them. We're trying to improve that. So why would we not do it with Ambulance New Brunswick? We're aware that there is times where, the back part of your question, where our fire department responds to accidents and they are substantially ahead of the ambulance. And this is not a shot at anyone that works for Ambulance New Brunswick, just to be perfectly clear. They would probably say that they want more resources if they were speaking freely. But the reality is when you're renewing an Ambulance New Brunswick contract, there is a certain amount of due diligence that you need to do, and you need to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success where people are getting the service they need and not calling and not being able to get an ambulance, because everybody has heard stories across this province. So we need to have a conversation about how we minimize that. So yes, UMB to actually ask for that. It's not only something that I should support. To me, it's a reasonable request that everybody should see why we need to do it, including the service provider themselves. Okay,
I want to talk about the complaint that was lodged against you by a member of the community. Is there something that you would like to address or explain to the public about why there's a lack of information available to them about this complaint?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you asked that question today. I'm wearing a pink shirt, which is for anti-bullying. I actually feel like in this particular case that an individual in the community, and the report would support that, obviously intentionally, in my mind, wanted to, impact me, harm me physically, mentally, not physically, but mentally, on on this complaint. There was absolutely no merit in the complaint whatsoever. The report said that it's completely unfounded. Other people were interviewed as part of this process, and they plain outright said that this never happened. So as far as the process, to go back to the question, is the individual is somewhat protected, where I can't go out and say, this is the individual that said this, and tell people the story. And that's very, very frustrating, because I want people to know kind of what I've been put through. Even though it came back that there was absolutely nothing that happened in this, it was completely unfounded. It's still, I drive the car, it's on the radio, my name is that I was investigated. I had to explain to my kids, hey, if you hear this at school, a kid asks you about investigating, this is what happens. That's not a good feeling to explain to your kids. My day job, I had to explain it to the board. Wanted people to know, I wanted to make sure that they didn't think it was fraud or sexual harassment. It doesn't give anything. And the reality of the situation is, although it might seem minor in nature to some people, when your face is on the front page of a news report and your picture's there, even though the investigation said that it wasn't there, you're still having harm done to my reputation. And I'm not as concerned about my reputation as the impacts it could have on my wife and kids. Basically, the ironic thing is that if I do go out and say who this individual is and specifically what happened, is I'm actually breaking the code of conduct, which is the ironic thing in all this. But I do have what came abundantly clear out of the process, and the town solicitor's recommendation is I do have grounds if I want to pursue this personally. Politicians, unfortunately, aren't covered, and we wonder why so many people don't raise their hand. It's because of stuff like this. I'll be honest, I love being mayor, but I have to ask myself at what point, this isn't my primary job, otherwise I'd be going to the food bank with my family. At what point is enough where this isn't worth it anymore? And I'm constantly right now having that conversation. Probably part of the reason why I don't do it is because I don't want this individual to be successful in taking basically my care for this community away and my passion for it. And I really felt like I've been under attack. But if there is one highlight that has been so comforting, is I did make a social media post because I felt like the public needed to know more. It was really, really heartwarming, the amount of people that reached out and kind of reaffirmed why you do it. I don't want to talk about it because I'm actually getting a little emotional.
Yeah,
I appreciated it.
I think we speak for everybody when we say we appreciate the folks that step up their leadership in their communities, whether that's local, provincial, or federal. And I do want to touch on that social media post. I mean, I read the comments and they were overwhelmingly supportive. You talked about having that conversation with your kids, and obviously the media plays a role in disseminating the information that came from council. How do you have that conversation with them? What is that like? How do you explain that to them?
It's hard because again, I can't even get into specifics with them, and not that my kids wouldn't keep a secret, and but I'd be breaking the code of conduct, even my own kids, I guess. I guess what you do, like how I went about it, is I let them know that there's an individual in the community that does not like your father, and they said some things that weren't true. And there is a process when somebody says something about someone that has to be followed. So they looked into it, and it came back that I did not do anything. My biggest fear of all that is that my kids get asked, or they listen to the radio when they're with their friends and they get embarrassed. That's where this isn't worth it for me anymore. And I don't know if that's a goal of the individual or not. I can't speak for them. But it's something that I have to deal with. And the minute that this experience is too much for my kids is the minute that I'll step down instantly. Part of the reason too is why you don't step down is because everyone will just assume that it was something to do with that investigation. And in my case, council will be providing me a letter for the future of my career to say that it was completely unfounded and made up. But it's just a really hard dilemma, and I don't think anyone would ever hear me talk about I always loved town council, but it's tested me to my core is, why do I deal with an individual like that? Why do I do this job? I can't answer that right now, is my problem, other than the fact that I made a commitment to my community, and right now I'm continuing to honor it. And right now I've got, my wife and kids still want me to do it. We did know it was my last term before I even ran for mayor. I've been pretty open about that. But there's so many other great things I can do in the community. I love coaching my kids. Why am I doing this when I could just spend more time doing that? It really doesn't make sense, other than there's some really good things that we're close to doing for this town, like really good, important things. Municipal reforms happened. It hasn't been easy. Don't want to abandon that. So you're weighing it all out at all times. Other than this has been a really hard experience for me. And if it was in my own personal life, let's just say I'd be a lot more vocal about what I went through than I am, because I'm looking out for the community and following the code of conduct of the town of Saint Andrews.
Has it allowed you to reflect on the wins that you've had?
It has. I'm going to, no matter what, leave town council and say it was a great experience. When I decided to move back to Saint Andrews, I knew I was going to be involved, not to this level, but I've absolutely loved some of the things that we've been able to do for this community. I'm not saying that everything's perfect. It's not. But if you look at some of the things this community has going for it compared to communities across New Brunswick, we've been very, very fortunate. And there's like a couple things, like one in particular that's like so close to being a reality and be a major, major win. And I want to be part of it. You know what I mean? But you know, in the same sense though, is again, there's got to be a point where there's always going to be something big for me to chase with a municipality. And it's a constant way, and it's probably been the most challenging thing. And I'm fine when people don't agree with you. They're not going to agree with every decision. I'm fine with that. That comes with the territory. If you're not okay with that, you're doing the wrong thing. Like, you should never put yourself for any type of politics, especially municipal, when it's like face to face all the time. But there's a line that was clearly crossed here, and it was intended in my mind to do me harm. And in somewhat, I feel like it was slightly successful, and that's what really bothers me.
Okay. With that being said, we'll try to finish this off with a more positive.
More positive.
During council, Chief Administrative Officer Chris Spears said that the W.C. O'Neill Arena had produced more stays in the community in the first quarter of the winter than the last quarter of the fall. I wonder, because you and I have talked about sports tourism in the winter, what do you make of the success of the arena this winter?
I'll say for all the arenas, sometimes we look at the arenas and we see bills, right? They're aging infrastructure. This arena, though, you're here, the studio's here for CHCO. The parking lot, so many days is full in the evening and weekends and things like that. There's no doubt about it that this arena generates traffic that keeps some of our businesses open year round. We are blessed to have it. The Garcelon Center we're blessed to have. And not that we aren't for the Patrick Connors, but the Garcelon Center seems to be more activity there. We get a lot of hotel stays because of the Garcelon Center too. So it really is, like, without the arenas, I think it'd be pretty quiet here in the winter. And people, when you move to St. Andrews, and you might have probably heard it, is beautiful place this summer. What are you going to do in the winter? Yeah. I personally never experienced that. There's lots of things to do here in the winter. And of course, this building meant a lot to me in my childhood. I didn't use it for a number of years, and now my kids originally weren't going to play hockey, and now I'm up here every single day myself. It's amazing. So even when my kids have left and I'm still in this community, I'll happily make sure that this building's here because I know what it does for the community. I
work for one of the best television stations in New Brunswick, so I'm never bored, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. News doesn't stop.
News doesn't stop. But I do want to the final question is, what are your hopes and expectations for the summer tourism this year? You're kind of embarking in October on this big wharf project. Should all the stars align on that? What are your expectations and goals for the summer tourism season?
Well, I think everybody, the elephant in the room is obviously our relationship with the United States, and we did see more U.S. travelers last year. So there's a little bit of a concern of, will the relationship fracture have impact? Some people are saying that more Americans might even come here that will defy, obviously, what's going on politically in order to show us their support. I think the community would be very welcoming to Americans. It's political. It's not Americans are still our neighbors. They're still our family in a lot of situations. At least for me, some of them are. We'll still be very happy to see that U.S. citizens come here. I think, though, the concern is that if there's less, but if there's one thing that we learned during the pandemic is when people aren't traveling as much, New Brunswick actually took care of us during the pandemic. So for everyone that doesn't come to the United States, there might be someone that doesn't go to the United States that decides to travel across New Brunswick again. And during the pandemic, the visitation rates for a lot of the attractions, a lot of the businesses were just as high as when the borders were open or where they're closed. It didn't matter. So I'm really hoping that New Brunswickers support New Brunswickers, and that we see, the northern part of the province come to the south and the south comes to northern, because it's very, very important. And I don't know if the province will be looking at anything. I know that during the pandemic they had a travel rebate program. Perhaps if we start to see that there's a little bit of a decline in the industry, perhaps a program like that would be launched. And last time the program was launched, Saint Andrews by the Sea was the #1 place where people redeemed their vacation. So got a little bit of, I think it was 20% back or something like that on hotel stays and meals. So, hopefully the Tourism Association of New Brunswick's looking at options like that in partnership with Tourism New Brunswick and, of course, the provincial government. So I'm optimistic it's going to be a great year. The only thing I'm a little cautious about as well is last year every weekend seemed to be sunny. And that's really good. When the sun shines in St. Andrews, we're really busy. The odds of it being that sunny again. But we are having a harsher winter, so maybe we'll get it out of the way. We'll see.
We can, send some good vibes up to the weather gods, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thanks as always for your candid conversation.
I appreciate the time.
My guest today is the mayor of the town of St. Andrews. I'm Natalie Sturgeon, and thanks for watching Your Town Matters.